Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Talk Sense. I'm Meg Faure. I'm the co-author of the Sense series books, including Baby Sense. And in today's episode, we're going to be looking at your baby's health, at boosting your baby's immunity. For those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, you've come out of a really cold and freezing winter, and so you might have been battling with colds and flu. And of course, for those of us in the Southern Hemisphere, we're coming up to that autumnal weather where when the seasons change, lots of germs are around. So we're wanting to think about boosting our baby's immunity already. So I'm just going to give you a couple of little tips. One of the things that many people don't know is that babies are actually born with a passive immunity. In other words, they don't make their own immune cells, they don't make their own immunity in the early days, and they're dependent on the immunity that they get from you in pregnancy. Those antibodies pass through the placenta to your baby in pregnancy and do protect her for the first few weeks and months of life. In addition to that, colostrum, which is that very creamy, rich milk your baby had in the first 3 days of breastfeeding, is full of antibodies and also boosts your baby and maintains a good immunity for the first few months. But from there on in, it's the things that your baby takes in and the things that you do with your baby that are important for their immunity. The very first thing that's important is sleep. We know that sleep definitely is important on a number of levels, but one of the ways that it's very important is because it builds your baby's immunity through developing T cells. And T cells are those fighting cells that come along and fight the viruses. So getting a good night's sleep is important. Right through into the preschool years, little ones should be down by 7 o'clock in the evening so they can get a good solid night's sleep. Likewise, during the day, having good naps. The second thing that can really help boost immunity is breastfeeding. We cannot stress it enough. Breastfeeding, even once you've started solids, does increase immunity because your antibodies do pass through in your milk to your baby. Once you've introduced solids, diet is also important. So that's our third thing that we need to have a look at with babies, is your baby's diet. It is very true that fruit and vegetables are where we find lots of vitamins and minerals, so that would be a good way to boost your baby's immunity. But there are also amazing micronutrients that are found in protein foods. So things like shellfish and fish and the omegas in fish, meat, and whole grains, legumes, and nuts are also very important in terms of your baby's immunity. The number 4 issue is the one that's probably the most contentious, so I don't think it should be, but it is, and that is vaccinations. Vaccinations are the absolute best way to protect your baby against childhood diseases before their immunity is fully developed. And sadly, the childhood diseases that are around at the moment can be exceptionally dangerous. Case in point, the measles outbreak that both Europe and America are battling with at the moment. So vaccinate your baby, be responsible about it, and follow your government schedule. The second last thing I want to talk about is just avoiding germs. It's very easy to over-sterilize and to try and create absolute bubbles around our babies. But actually, babies don't need to be completely sterile. We do want some germs in the environment just because it helps with avoiding allergies. But certainly if you're in the presence of people who are sick and people who are coughing and sneezing, then you would want to wash your hands. In terms of avoiding germs, maybe avoiding things like going in public transport or very busy places at times when your baby's immunity might be a little bit low, such as when they're very young, or when there are lots of germs around, like in autumn. Of course, the last thing we'd have to speak about then is, which leads on from that, is sterilizing. There's no need to sterilize your baby's feeding objects after 6 months of age, but before 6 months of age, it is worth sterilizing. And if you live in an area where the water is unclean, it's very important that you do sterilize the water for any formula bottles that you're making up. So in a nutshell, the things that you're wanting to have a look at to boost your baby's immunity is to get a good night's sleep, to breastfeed your baby for as long as possible, to feed your baby a wholesome and varied diet, to look at vaccinations, very importantly, and then to avoid germs and to sterilize as and when necessary. Of course, the one thing I haven't spoken about is supplements. Many people will ask me whether or not their babies need supplementation in terms of vitamins and minerals. And the reality is that if you're breastfeeding or if your baby's on a very healthy diet and is a good eater, you don't really need additional supplements. Having said that, for most of us, we've experienced the fussy eating stages with toddlers. Maybe you've given up breastfeeding a little bit early. So in those sort of cases, yes, we do encourage vitamins and minerals. And there you're looking at getting advice from your pharmacist. And it'll usually be a vitamin and mineral that contains high levels of vitamin C and of zinc as well. So good luck with that. Before I head off, I'm just going to pick up one question that came up this week on our baby meetup, which is every Tuesday on my Facebook page, Meg Faure Facebook page. And on there, one of the moms asked a health-related question. She said, my 7-month-old boy has had a fever and a rash all over his body. Could it be baby measles? Doctor wasn't sure. Fever gone now, rash still there. What can I put on the rash? Okay, I don't think it would be baby measles. Measles is a very, very deadly disease. It is extremely dangerous, and babies who have measles are very, very ill. So a little fever with a little bit of a rash is probably not measles. Might be German measles or one of the other rash diseases, but I don't think it would be measles. And it really is important at this point to say that measles is an exceptionally dangerous disease. Your doctor would have picked it up, and he would have been hypervigilant because the complications of measles can kill a baby. So it's unlikely to be measles, but I certainly would watch it. It's probably one of our viral rashes like Rosella and German measles that has just come up. And they always start with a bit of a fever. A couple of days later, you have a rash, and afterwards your baby's fine. So I don't think there's anything that you need to put on that rash. It's not like eczema that needs to be moisturized. I would just say watch your baby and make sure that she doesn't or he doesn't end up with a cough or just very, very miserable, because then you could be looking at a complication. So good luck with your baby's health, and we'll see you next week on Talk Sense. Thanks. Cheers.